All right, I'll just start it off now. So for everyone who's joined, and if you haven't attended one of these in the past 3 weeks, we just keep everyone's mic and camera off to prevent any interruptions throughout the presentation. Throughout, if you do have any questions, please use the chat function and just write down your question. And at the end, I'll read them out to Victoria and we'll go through them and discuss them at that point. But I'll give a quick introduction and I'll hand it over to you there in a second. So I'd like to welcome Victoria Fernandez. She's a water resource and coastal engineer with over 15 years of experience in stormwater management, shoreline protection, flood mapping, and river hydraulics. Her approach to stormwater management focuses on integrating climate change adaptation, community engagement, natural and nature-based features and processes to the watershed level when possible. She has been involved in the design of multiple green infrastructure projects, including the design of a living shoreline in Regatta Point, the update to the Green Shore and Waterfront Development Guidelines, and multiple net zero peak runoff flow studies in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And currently she's working with CBCL based in Nova Scotia. So I'll hand it over to you to take it away.
Thank you so much, Alistair. Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending. This presentation will discuss the different nature-based approaches to manage stormwater at the residential and the city level, with a focus mainly on a description and design considerations of systems that can be implemented at the home level. Some of you might have attended to the previous presentations and might be already familiar with the basic principles of stormwater management and green infrastructure. However, I would like to take 2 minutes to go over this for the benefits of those who are not familiar with these processes and methods. Oops, okay, there we go. So let's begin by taking a look to the water cycle in a natural area. As we learned many years ago in school, water evaporates from bodies of water and plants, and it condenses in clouds and precipitates as rain and snow. In a natural area, some of that water infiltrates and recharges groundwater. As the soils become saturated, that is, the voids in the soil gets filled with water, precipitation becomes runoff and it starts traveling overland to a body of water. As the water flows, it encounters trees, grass, bushes, wetlands, which tend to slow down the flows, reducing the risk of erosion and reducing the risk of flooding downstream close to the body of water. Now, in a urban setting, things up in the skies generally remain the same. However, when the water precipitates over an impervious area, it travels faster towards a body of water without infiltrating and while carrying pollutants like oil, dirt, metals, lawn fertilizers, etc. During the rain event, this increases the flooding risk downstream, and in the long term, it impacts the health of the receiving water body. So generally, we have relied on the traditional or standard stormwater management system to manage these flows with these systems that are designed to take the runoff off the surface quickly. These systems are generally designed to only for minor storm events, and yet as they collect water and they move downstream from entire communities, they become larger and expensive. Because of the pollutants they carry and the disconnection between precipitation, groundwater, and habitat that results from urbanization, these systems contribute to the degradation of valuable habitat and water quality. So nature-based approaches basically use vegetation, soils, and other elements and practices to restore some of the natural processes required to manage water and create healthier urban environments. These approaches are also known as green infrastructure, low impact development, and as a type of pest management practices. This slide basically presents the range of options moving from left to right, the more mechanical and traditional options that are about flow control, which is basically what most cities have been relying from decades and almost hundreds of years. Then there are other systems that are rely on detention, which is basically slowing down the water in a ponding area and letting it flow slower. Then retention systems basically contain the water completely until it evaporates and infiltrates. Now, green infrastructure generally encourages filtration through a medium that allowed some treatment and some removals of solids before continuing to discharge. Some encourage infiltration, which is basically the sucking of water by the soil and allowing ground water refill. And there is options that also provide treatment. So they are closer to mimicking the natural processes. They encourage infiltration. They allowed evapotranspiration also to take place, and they create habitat. Now, at the city or county scale, for these infrastructures to be effective, they need to be spread around big areas in a way as a patchwork of natural areas that provide habitat, flood protection, cleaner air, and cleaner water. There are multiple examples of these type of approaches throughout Canada, in Mississauga, in the Victoria, and here in Yarmouth in Hawthorne Street. This is a street that has no storm sewer at all. It relies basically on permeable pavers and rain gardens for stormwater management. In Charlottetown, some of these approaches include the farmers market and the Agricultural Canada ponds. They offer good examples of naturalized stormwater retention areas that have restored wildlife and wetland habitat. This wildlife includes Lucy the duck that grows her family at the nearby Superstore Garden Center. This is also in Mount Edward in a naturalized pond that is controlling stormwater at the site. Now, at the neighborhood scale and at the residential level, the extensive implementation of natural approaches in people's homes would offer the opportunity of improving the health of bodies of waters like Ellen's Creek, which is surrounded by an urbanized area. So if many residents throughout watershed, throughout Charlottetown and in the watershed were able to implement these sort of measures on a large scale, then it will positively impact not only flooding risks, but also local flooding risks, but also the health of nearby stormwater. And houses basically has produced multiple sources or feature multiple sources of urban runoff, from the roofs, driveways, access roads, low grass, and especially with low grass, some of them contain fertilizers. So there are several approaches that can be implemented at the home level that will address each one of these sources. Some of these approaches basically consist of rain harvesting, permeable pavers, either at the street level or on people's driveway, and rain gardens, and when possible, bioretention swales. So rain gardens basically collect stormwater in a low area, and it might collect water from multiple sources, just as the roof, by disconnecting the downspout and diverting the water over there, and also driveways. Rain gardens filter this water in shallow depressions and allow the soil to suck the water and naturally filters the runoff. This also not only offers the benefit of water treatment, but also reduces the amount of water that goes into the existing sewer system, and eventually that goes on the surface, and it reduces flooding risks. Some additional benefits besides filtering pollutants from runoff: they allowed or encouraged the recharging of groundwater. They remove standing water from your yard. They reduce mosquito breeding. They increase beneficial insects that eliminate pests. They reduce the potential of home flooding. They create habitat for birds, butterflies. They can survive drought seasons, but of course, this depends on the type of plants that are included in the rain garden. And then they help to reduce garden maintenance. And I think that on these busy times, we all can appreciate some extra time to share with family. This slide basically shows how a cross section, or in detail how the rain garden is put together. Basically, it consists on a base of washed sand and then compost of amended soil, and these soils basically are generally designed or mixed in a way that they allow initial good infiltration. Usually this works best in areas where the substrate can have has a decent infiltration rate, and if that's not the case, maybe then some additional modifications can be included in like a subdrain or a perforated pipe at the bottom that allows some of the exceeding water to basically join the standard sewer system. But in most cases where the soil is good, which is generally it's the case in many places in PEI, you just need a general good compost soil and some sand, and then the most important part would be planting drought and flood tolerant plants, locating it in a low spot, and allowing for some stones to control erosion at the edges. So the considerations for location basically look for spots where the rain pools. You might want to capture water running off the roof, or choose a location further along and direct the downspouts towards the rain garden. The rain garden should be located at least 10 feet or 3 meters away from a foundation. It is good to plan the grading and the location of the rain garden to provide overflow. So design it in a way that if once that it reaches capacity under a major storm, that the water can basically leave the site without ponding unnecessarily and causing additional flooding. Determine another consideration for location is associated with the runoff source. What runoff source it's going to basically feed the rain garden with water. Rain gardens can capture stormwater from any impervious area, including rooftops, driveways, and patios and terraces. The size of those rain gardens depends on how much stormwater you aim to capture and the type of soil that you have. The more impervious the soil is, or the less infiltration capacity the soil has, then the larger the rain garden has to be. And also the slope of the site might play a role, because the rain garden, it has to have a flat bottom. So the steeper the slope is, then the more soil needs to be regraded, and then the bigger the rain garden has to be. You know, the rain garden might not be suitable for places with a slope larger than 12%. As I was saying, the plant selection, it's a key factor also for the rain garden to work. There are the main recommendation is that to use basically native plants, because they generally have very deep root systems, and sometimes they can go even up to 4 meters of depth. So most native plants also cast off their roots annually. They grow new roots and provide more soil aeration and pathways for the water to flow. And because they are native, you know that these plants will thrive in the weather that you see locally. So examples of flowers include wild columbine, white turtle, hail, turtle head, sorry about that, and blue flag iris. One of the presentations that preceded this one, it was basically focused on rain garden, and there were some extensive discussions there about plants and local plants and where to source them. So I would recommend taking a look to that presentation if you haven't, to find more details about plants and how to manage them. Rain gardens require some extra care during the first year, really watering them regularly, and making sure that that after heavy rain there is not a big erosion. But after that, basically they will require as much maintenance as any other lawn does. In some checks after heavy rain, they still need weeding, they need mulch, and they need removal of dead vegetation. If you have created some inlets, if there are particular inlets, like in this case, that are feeding the rain garden, then make sure that it is always clear and there are not blockages that might prevent the water from getting to your rain garden. Another method or another approach that that can be used to take advantage of the rainwater and reduce flooding risk and improve water quality downstream, it's basically rainwater harvesting. Rainwater harvesting provides an inexpensive supply of water. It reduces stormwater runoff and pollution, reduces erosion in the urban environment, provides water that needs needed treatment for irrigation and non-potable indoor uses, helps reduce peak summer demands, and help to introduce demand management for drinking water system. One important consideration about rainwater harvesting is that the runoff from rooftops does contain pollutants. It contains metals or hydrocarbons from roofing materials, nutrients from atmospheric deposition, and bacteria from bird droppings. So it's not 100% clean, but it might still be of good quality to be used as non-potable domestic uses and for irrigation. They can come, the way of installing a rain harvesting system in your home can come in many shapes. It can be something as simple as a barrel that you can get in Home Depot for $100 maybe, and it can also consist in multiple rain barrels located to the side of a home in series, for higher demands of usage. And it can also go on the ground, and it can also be connected to the internal plumbing system for non-potable uses, but it requires a dedicated system of pipes to avoid risk of cross-contaminations among drinking water pipe network. They are usually come in dark materials, or they are buried to prevent light penetration and the growth of algae. Dual plumbing system is needed, I just mentioned that, and additional treatment might be required for portable uses, although that would require some standards and some guidelines that are not specifically completely developed yet, unless you follow the SCCME and the drinking water standard from the city and the province. Moving on to another approach that is also used. There are the permeable pavement, which basically consist in paving the surface, but still allowing infiltration through joints and pores. Infiltrated water is temporarily stored under the washed gravel base until the water naturally filters or travels to a sewer system through a perforated pipe. So it's basically a layered approach that consists on different bases that allow infiltration, and this little pipe over here to the right, it's that perforated pipe that might allow some excedent water to join the standard system, the storm sewer. Because of the drainage, then they are less prone to ice buildup during winter and thaw free cycles. There are different types of permeable pavers. There are module units or blocks with open joints filled with fine and washed gravel. There is pervious concrete, which is basically rigid pavement similar to conventional concrete without fine aggregates, which results in the formation of connected pores. And there are permeable interlocking pavers that are precast grids with open cell or spaces that can be built with grass, gravel, or sand. So each one will be beneficial depending on what your situation is, your house looks, your preferred style, and basically the users of the area. Some considerations for design and maintenance: locate them and install them in an area free of obvious sources of pollutants. They need sweeping and vacuuming regularly. That's one thing that is constantly brought up, and that actually affects the performance. But if they are properly maintained and then they are vacuumed, or they can also be manually cleaned. If this is done regularly, they will continue performing, and by regularly, more or less, it can be every 2 year thing, depending on where you live, depending on the characteristic of your home. Many like our pavements need some treatment every 2 years, even the conventional pavements. So they are not that different from conventional in that sense. They still need some spread with de-icing salt, but do not use sand as it might clog the pores. So the interlocking grid pavers filled with grass might needs conventional maintenance as you do with your lawn. Do not use fertilizers for those cases, because then that will increase the chances of contamination, especially contamination of groundwater. Install a well inspection to allow monitoring for proper function. That means basically leaving a vertical pipe or a vertical entrance, so it can be a vertical entrance, so it can be monitored, and it can be seen if it's infiltrating or if it's working well. Of course, allow overflow, same as with the rain garden. If something is ponding, then you want your property to be able to drain to the surface and not get flooded. And be monitor or look for standing water, because standing water on the pavement might be an indication of a failure. There is plenty information about these methods, and all over the internet. I extracted a few, and I am going to actually share my screen a little bit to take a peek into those. Let me just do a new share here. Okay, I'm sharing my screen so we can see what pops up when we. So there are several guidelines. There is the Credit Valley Conservation Authority guideline, and the Toronto Regional Conservation Authority guidelines. So these guidelines provide a lot of information on low impact development, storm management. As guide, they have a comprehensive list of measures, and they have quick fact sheets that present, say for example, that present summaries of the design considerations for each. Could Alistair, can you confirm that maybe my screen is showing? Is this showing?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So this is a great resource if you're looking for additional information and for considerations for design and location. Another great resource it's in the Metro Vancouver Stormwater Source Control Design Guidelines, and it also offers information on specifications, sizing, and material considerations for installation. And this is it. And just let's bear for 2 seconds that my connection is not the biggest and it's not the fastest. Of course, silence. It's like that joke when you go to a karaoke and choose a song with a long solo, and then you don't know what to do with the silence. Okay, but anyway, hopefully when it loads, yes, we can see this. It offers lots of information, design considerations, and it also has fact sheets and cross sections and information of what to do, what to design, and considerations for location, and for, in this case, for example, integrating multiple measures. In this, for example, this one takes the permeable pavers. The exceedant for the permeable paver goes to the rain garden, and there are some under drain there that connects with the storm sewer system, and then it works as an overall large system. So I recommend that you see this guideline as well if you're looking for more information. And there is also the Environmental Protection Agency website that also has some fact sheets, although it has considerations that are, some of them are applicable to the US, but it has many learning resources, and you can also monitor this, take a look at them. And there is the Sustainable Technology website, which is also, I think, funded or comes from a collaboration between the Credit Valley Conservation Authority, the Lake Simcoe region, and the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, and it has also tons of resources for learning, and it has videos that provide additional information. So it's also a great resource. So anyway, that's what I prepared for tonight. And if you have any questions, I would like to hear it.
Hi there. That's great. Thanks for sharing those resources. One of the first comments was about sharing the presentation as well as the slides. So the presentation itself will be going up on the city's YouTube page, and I'll send out an email to everyone who registered for that, so they'll have access to that. Would it be possible to get a copy of your presentation just so people will be able to do that and have access to those links?
Absolutely.
And I know we had talked about it through email about the New Brunswick Environmental Network under the BRACE project. I was wondering if you'd be able to talk a bit about that and kind of share some information.
Absolutely, and I can't believe I didn't make a note about that. And it was so present in my head that I thought that I didn't need a reminder. Sure, absolutely. The New Brunswick Environmental Network, it's also New Brunswick Environmental Network. It's they have created a community of practice. Okay.
Well, while you pull that up, I'm just going to answer another one of these questions here. Is there any real examples of rain gardens in PEI that we can visit and learn? So if you didn't attend, there was a presentation, was it 2 weeks? I can't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago. Time's just flying by. But Norman Dewar with the Ellens Creek Watershed Group did a presentation on rain gardens, and in that he talked about the installation of a rain garden at Spring Park Elementary, that was funded through the city's micro grant program. So that's one you could visit. It's right out front of that school. And if you want more information about how that was built, what went well, what the lessons were learned from that, you can go and watch that presentation. It's up on the city's YouTube page, and as well as the website that you would have registered for this presentation. But I'll let you talk about that now.
Well, yes, the New Brunswick Environmental Network, one of their initiatives consists of natural nature-based climate change protection community of practice, and it's a repository of also learning resources to implement green infrastructure measures, not only for stormwater but also to the coastal level. They have multiple cases studies, and with a map that shows different examples throughout actually Canada, but mostly Atlantic Canada. There are a few sites in PI, basically living shorelines, and for everyone's benefit, living shorelines basically means restoring some wetland and marsh areas to reduce the impact of wave agitation in the shorelines and reduce erosion. And they can be completely green, but they can also be hybrid, having some sort of reinforcement with armor stone at the edge, as long as the wave environment allows it, because if there is a lot of agitation, then it might not be suitable. But that's what a living shoreline is. There are some projects from the Climate Lab at the University of PEI, and Permeable Pavement, which is also shoreline protection. But anyway, this website will grow, and these case studies will grow, and as time moves along, you will see other projects coming up and showing. And if you do your rain garden, or if you implement this in your home, you can contact them and put your project in the map. So that's really great, and become a case study of success. They also provide resources there, plenty of webinars, and with different topics. For green infrastructure, there are some economic analysis, because there is sometimes the question, okay, how much a green infrastructure costs against a standard approach, and then there are multiple resources there. So I just wanted, I meant to bring attention to this website. It's local, it's having, it have multiple local examples, and it's very relevant.
Just I want to jump in there. You mentioned the cost comparison to maybe more traditional engineered solutions. We had a question here that said, thank you for the great presentation and for your introducing a very meaningful concept. Do you have any ROI, return on investment, or payback analysis for specific systems to see how much we need to invest and how it will tell, and I guess comparing it to the returns? I know that's a very difficult question to tackle, because it'll vary so much with the scale and the size.
Absolutely, that's it. It varies with the conditions. It varies with the scale of the site, with the size that you are managing. I mean, to be honest, the small scale considerations for a rain garden, for a home residential level, it has less research available in terms of comparison. I can tell, for example, that a rain garden might cost about 30 to 40. Installing a rain garden generally might cost 30 to 40 Canadian dollars by a cubic meter. Permeable pavers can range for a 50 square meter driveway. The initial cost can be somewhere between $12,000 and $50,000, and depending on the technology that you use, you might require little maintenance versus lots of maintenance. So that one, there is a little bit of uncertainty there into what the larger cost is. And for a rain barrel, systems can basically range between 2,500, something as simple as $100 barrel from Home Depot to something as complicated as $15,000 for a dual system and 5,000 gallon system. Another consideration to include that makes complicated calculating the return is that there is a return in terms of environmental health and in terms of climate change adaptation. There is a lot of research going on trying to quantify this and trying to bring these considerations into asset management and to bring what they are calling the natural asset management considerations for municipalities and cities to take into account when they make their decisions and when they make their economical analysis. I hope that helped a little bit.
Okay, and thank you, Farhan. He's just shared a document there. It's actually one I don't think I've looked at before. It seems like a really interesting and very helpful document, mostly on rain gardens there. So
okay.
That's another source if you want to check that one out. But I want to go back because I don't want to miss a question about the kind of a local question, which I can answer here. Has the ongoing process of ditch infilling in Charlottetown been canceled yet? The ditches are indeed swales. So for those of you who aren't familiar, ditch infilling would be basically putting a more of an engineered approach to putting a pipe in the ground and burying it and just making it a more flat lawn. It's pretty much just done for kind of aesthetic reasons, and it's very kind of more of a traditional approach that has been done throughout Charlottetown and across Canada. So right now, from my understanding, we kind of have paused doing that for, I think it was maybe a year or a couple of years back. There's concerns about it being very expensive and not being the most efficient, whereas just having a ditch can do basically the same job without spending a very large amount of money to bury a kind of pipe system. So it's currently, I believe, it's paused. I know the manager of Public Works isn't in favor of spending the money to do it. So that's, it's more of a council and how they decide to go forward. Right now, as I said, they aren't doing it, except I believe when it is necessary for safety concerns, or it has to be done to say put in an active active pathway. So there is some situations where they still are doing it, but less in their scale, just doing it just because they have done it in the past. And it is a very, there's definitely some pros and there's definitely cons. And I know I brought to our environment and sustainability committees a lot of the stuff you've mentioned today, just alternatives to ditch infilling as a means of stormwater management. So I guess we'll have to just wait and see as we move forward. But we do have another question here. Oh, I think that was just a comment. But thank you very much for your clear answers and explanation. I've learned a lot from your sessions. Thank you for attending the sessions. Trying to think if I have any other questions for you. I guess, have you worked on any, can you talk a bit about some of the projects you've worked on? I know you mentioned some of in the introduction, some of the stuff in Nova Scotia you've worked on. Is there any specific project you would see being something that we could do something similar here in Charlottetown, or that would be relevant to us, as you know, Halifax and Charlottetown are both coastal cities and are dealing with, you know, the effects of climate change, sea level rise, and all of that?
Yeah. So I guess the neat thing about grid infrastructure is that it's universally applied. Of course, there are local considerations like the infiltration rate of your soil, and actually Halifax has the very tight soils. So the rain gardens need a little bit more thought and in consideration that they would, for example, in certain areas of PEI that have really good soil and really great infiltration rates. basically, living shorelines and green infrastructure in general, it's universally applied. So examples like the Hawthorne Street in Yarmouth can easily be applied also in VI. Of course, you need certain conditions. You need to have certain grading, make sure that the water, if during heavy rainfall, make sure that the water can actually, there is a path for major flows to leave without causing any additional flooding. That's an engineering consideration. But other than that, generally you can apply them everywhere and anywhere.
All right. Yeah, so for on living shorelines, something we can definitely add to that, the New Brunswick inventory they have there of the different projects. We're currently looking at doing a living shoreline project by the QEH, one of the hospitals here. That's like pretty much right on the coast there. So we're looking at doing a living shoreline installation and kind of demonstration site. And we have done some other green kind of infrastructure projects of note. In Frank Macaulay Park, we have a bioswale. So that was a park that had a lot of flooding issues, and they've installed kind of a natural or bioswale, as well as there's the rain garden installation I mentioned at Spring Park. And I think we'll be, in the fall, we're going to try and update our city's website to more accurately, or get more information about what has been done and add that. So that's something we're looking at, and we'll have to collaborate with that organization to get it out there so it's known to other residents, other municipalities, and organizations. Just looking in chat here, I don't think we've had any other questions, just some more. Thank you for your time and presenting.
Thank you, Marlon. Happy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, now if you haven't viewed and want to learn more about rain gardens, I'd recommend going back and watching that presentation with Norman Dewar. And next week will be Graham Little with the Insurance Bureau of Canada. We'll be talking about how all of this changes to climate change, understanding flooding, has it been affected to the industry, and what we can do, what has been changing, and just also going over what different policies different policies are available as homeowners, renters, and all of that to make sure you're adequately protected for those flooding situations that we preferably would like to avoid, but unfortunately happen. So I'll give it another minute to see if we have any questions. But if not, I'd like to thank you again for taking the time this evening, and for all of you for attending. I do see if I have it linked here. We do have a survey if you haven't done it in past weeks. I'm just sharing it in the chat now. It basically just asks, it's probably like a 1 or 2 minute survey that asks how you heard about this speaker series or this particular presentation, what you thought about it, and what initiatives or projects you'd like to see from our environment and sustainability team here at Charlottetown. So it'd be great if you haven't had the chance to fill it out in past weeks. It would be great if you could take a look at it, but I don't think we're having any more questions pop up. So yeah, thanks very much and have a good evening.
Thank you.